Skarloey Railway is a wonderful place in the hills to go and visit. The narrow gauge engines work very hard to make sure the company is welcomed from happy passengers. Sometimes the tracks will need some repairs. That's where Rusty the little diesel comes in with his maintenance train to mend the lines. If the tracks are buckled or bent from the sun, they'll have to be replaced as soon as possible to ensure safety to the railway. Duncan didn't care that much for maintenance, but ever since his incidents, he's been more careful ever since. And he didn't stop on viaducts either, delaying his passengers. One morning, Duncan was ready to fetch his train where he met Rusty at Providence Gate.
Hello, Duncan. Collecting passengers, I see.
Yes, indeed. Thank ye for asking. You know, I think today might be a fine day.
After I mended that bad piece of rail?
Definitely. And I'm not going to stop anywhere besides the station.
Oh, that's nice to hear. I guess Renee's story taught you some sense. Oh, and Duncan, be careful out there. There's,
What's got Duncan in such a hurry?
Well, we did make some arrangements about maintenance, but there's one serious thing I forgot to tell him.
Duncan was having a wonderful day to himself, and he kept his word too. He didn't rock, he didn't roll, he was making sure the passengers were having a splendid time. What Duncan didn't know, however, was that Rusty was trying to warn him about a landslide near some hills, and Duncan was the first to leave with his train for the day. He rounded the corner and saw the landslide. He immediately braked as hard as he could, but it was too late.
What in? Oh no! Driver! Brake! Brake!
The impact wasn't major, but Duncan absolutely despised it.
Everyone, be patient. I'm going to try to reach the next station to call for help.
Luckily, Duncan's driver didn't need to. Rusty arrived shortly with workmen and shovels to clear Duncan out of the muddy landslide. 50 minutes passed by, and Duncan was finally out, though he was still grumpy about it.
Thanks, Rusty.
Anytime.
At the top station, Duncan was still grumpy and wanted to tell his driver about it.
Hey Duncan, do you feel okay? After the little accident this morning?
I wasn't told about a landslide. What happens next? After I rounded a corner, I ran into it like as if it wasn't even there. Ridiculous!
I know you weren't told about the landslide, Duncan, and there's no need to take your anger out on it. In fact, in my young days, I was stuck in a landslide too. It was a rainy day, and me and Renes were not the best of friends back then. We absolutely despised each other back then. Even with my new cab, I was beginning to think if cabs were even worth it for engines anymore. And before I knew it, I hit the landslide and was stuck. And guess who came to my rescue?
Duncan was surprised, and when he heard that, he took a wild guess.
Renius?
Exactly. Renes came to my rescue. We were still a little cross after that, but then our sour moods changed to laughter after I remembered that old stick in the mud saying, I couldn't help but laugh, and so did Renes. The cleaners were confused, but to us, it was very funny.
You know, that is a little funny when you think about it. Oh, And could I ask Rusty if I'd like to try some maintenance work for a change? I want to make sure I don't run into another hazard on the tracks.
Be his guest.
That night, when Rusty was parked in the sheds after his work of maintenance on the line, he got some bad news from his driver.
We're low on diesel fuel, Rusty, so you have to stay here tomorrow. A shipment of diesel fuel will be arriving tomorrow from the other railway soon, but it won't be until tomorrow night.
Rusty felt sad, though he was proud of the work he did today. But who was going to inspect the tracks from hazards or bumps or anything tomorrow? Soon Duncan arrived and he noticed Rusty was looking glum.
Is everything alright, Rusty? I mean, I still thank you for getting me out of that mud, but I still, you know.
Rusty won't be able to do maintenance on the tracks tomorrow. We're completely low on diesel fuel and there's no other engines that could do Rusty's job while he's out of action.
Duncan thought for a moment. He was used to his regular passenger duties, and he hates getting into incidents. He has tried to be more careful ever since his experience. And then Duncan spoke up.
Can I take Rusty's maintenance train tomorrow?
Rusty's driver was confused. He turned around and wanted to know what Duncan was on about.
You see, I've been into a lot of accidents, or have caused accidents, and I think Rusty does a good job repairing the line. And if it's alright with him, I'd like to see what it's like in your place for the day, and try some mending myself.
Well, thanks for volunteering, Duncan. I must say...
Good idea, Duncan.
Everyone knew that voice. Mr. Hugh heard everything from the shed, and told Duncan everything he had to know for tomorrow. Duncan was a little skeptical, but at the same time, he wanted to please Rusty and do better on the Skarloey Railway.
Why, I must say you are doing than the previous days since you first arrived, Duncan. I'll telephone Sir Topham Hatt and make some arrangements right away.
And Mr. Hugh did. Even Rusty approved the idea of Duncan trying a different job on the railway, and his driver will show him the ropes tomorrow morning. The next day, Peter Sam took Duncan's passenger train and some trucks too. He didn't mind the extra work he was given, and set off for Croven's Gate with his strange train. Mr. Hugh and Rusty's driver were gonna join Duncan for the maintenance work.
Alright, first things first. We inspect the track at Cross Nigh Certain. Then we see what's over at Glennock. Then there's Renea's, Skarloey, and Lakeside. It shouldn't be too bad.
Right, sir. We'll clear the line from hazards.
And Duncan set off with the maintenance train. He wanted to make sure the lines were safe and that the rails were nice and smooth. Rusty's driver tagged along too, since he knew what it was like with Rusty. At Krosnakuren, there was nothing out of the ordinary to report, so Duncan continued down the line to Glennock. There was a faulty signal up ahead, so some workmen stayed behind to see what was the matter.
The workmen are setting up some warning flags and sending the signal to danger. These yellow flags are essential to the railway lines, and my guess is that there might be some trouble on the tracks too, but I'm not sure yet.
You're right, sir. I just hope that there won't be something blocking the tracks. The last thing I need is another landslide to run into again.
But don't sweat it, Duncan. We still got more rails to inspect.
And Duncan chuffed away in a big huff. He wasn't cross, but he was looking out very carefully for anything that wouldn't seem safe on the railway. And sure enough, when he got to the tunnel where Duncan once had an incident while rocking and rolling, he felt something hit him.
Ouch! Something's hit me funnel!
The workman got out and saw the problem.
Yeah, man. Well, would you look at that? Cracks are forming outside the top of the funnel.
Well, I mean, it wasn't that bad at first. But when I noticed the dangerous things that occurred, I started to be careful.
I see. Well, this tunnel's gonna have to have some careful reconstructing. I'd watch that tall funnel if I were you.
Exactly. Let's not forget that you stalled on Renee's viaduct to delaying your passengers.
Yes, I know. I didn't know any better. It won't happen again.
Are you alright, pal?
Yes, I'm fine. Can we go on further now?
I mean, Duncan, we'll have to inspect again when we head back.
But there's still more rails to cover. Let's move on.
The maintenance crew were taking the time at every stop they made, whether it be a station, or bridge, or tunnel. Duncan didn't want to be reminded of his incidents, but he also wanted to ensure safety on the rails for Rusty. After some of the workmen got their refreshments from Lakeside, Duncan headed off to Skarloey station. He met Peter Sam again, who was dropping off the last of his passengers and ready to take the trucks to the slate quarry. Duncan felt a little exhausted, but he was gonna be on his way back to the shed soon.
Hey, man. You feeling alright?
I don't know. I did want to help Rusty, but I'd say I'll leave this job for him to do.
Cheer up, Duncan. This is the last stop for the workmen to mend the lines. I bet Rusty will feel very happy after hearing this.
Well, at least I tried.
And you did, Duncan. Would you like to help out again the next time Rusty isn't available?
I suppose so. But it's been a tiring day, I'll tell you that.
Well, at least you know how to handle it now, Duncan.
Duncan wanted to grumble some more, but deep down he knew he did the right thing for Rusty. On the return trip back to the sheds, Duncan had to go through the tunnel, when suddenly it happened.
Holy Toledo!
Oh my goodness! That tunnel has more cracks! Good job on thinking fast, Duncan.
A huge chunk of the tunnel was going to fall off and hit the ground, and the workmen had to think fast.
We need some mending blocks, quickly!
No, it's not safe. We'll need to carefully pull it out.
Well, everyone, get your tools.
It took some time to dig away the chunk of the tunnel. It even held up Peter Sam with his passengers on his return trip. At last, the chunk was finally out and fell right onto the tracks. The only problem, however, was that the men had to move it off the tracks. Duncan was getting fed up with this, and so were the passengers. But Peter Sam had an idea.
What if we pulled the chunk of the tunnel out of the way?
Great thinking, Peter Sam. You and Duncan will pull the tunnel chunk away from the entrance and the workmen will push it out of the way.
I do feel very tired, but I do want to get rid of that chunk as soon as possible.
The job was easier said than done. Duncan was chained to the tunnel chunk and Peter Sam was coupled behind Duncan's train. The two pulled back, and with enough force, the workmen pushed it off to the side and off the tracks.
Well Sam and Duncan. We did a good job.
We'll have to rebuild a tunnel now, but I think that's enough for us for one day.
I highly agree. Come on, you two. Back to the sheds.
Duncan was exhausted when he reached the sheds. He felt very worn and tired, and also quite good about himself too. He told Rusty everything.
Well, good job nevertheless. Just remember, not everyone is perfect.
And a change is as good as a rest. Even though maintenance felt much longer than I expected it would be, I'll leave this job to you, Rusty, since you're better at it than I am.
Well, no matter what you felt, Duncan, you still did well.
And would you look at that? The diesel fuel arrived just for Rusty.
Let's not forget that a nice long run can be useful too, especially when there's an alternative engine that uses a different type of fuel.
Or if you need help from a sticky situation.
Everyone had a good laugh. And even Duncan smiled too.